I was here approximately 83 days ago, speaking at JudCon, actually. This is my second time back in India in the last few months. Great to be here again. It's a very long flight for me. I'm going to be talking about a framework which I've been working on called the Errai framework. It's not actually in the title, but the title describes what the framework does. And I'm going to try and get through this really quickly. There's a lot of material here, and so I'll just put this caveat out here. If there's any questions that you have about what I'm about to blow through, you're welcome to approach me after the talk. I'll be around, and you can kind of hit me up for that. So I think the best way to start this presentation is to talk about what's changing out there, or what has changed in the market for web applications. And one of the things that we're seeing this with many different frameworks. We're seeing it with, in the JavaScript world and more generally, we're seeing more application code living in the browser as opposed to living on the server. This is a big underlying trend. I think most developers have woken up to this idea that the client is getting rich again, whereas before it was getting really thin with web applications. So we've kind of come around circle. And of course, browsers have more computing power to do this sort of thing. These JavaScript engines like Google's V8 engine in Chrome, TraceMonkey and Firefox, these are really powerful virtual machines where we can really do some really powerful stuff. People have probably seen some awesome 3D demos and stuff. And they're getting faster and faster than ever, and they'll continue to get faster. And so this trend of rich client will continue to accelerate. Now, I think the real question is why Java, which is what GWT is. I assume that most people here are familiar with what GWT does. It compiles Java to JavaScript. So sometimes the question will come up, well, why not just write your client code in JavaScript? Well, we think that there's some good reasons. There's a large talent pool of Java enterprise developers out there. There's great tooling for Java. And there's an amazing Java ecosystem that we can all kind of tap into. We have Eclipse and Ant, Maven, IntelliJ, all these wonderful things within the ecosystem we're used to. So I kind of preempted myself here. So Java's cool on the server, but as a web developer, I spend most of my time writing client-side code. But with Errai, what we can do is we can start thinking about using the same code on both the client and the server. So this is where we start to sort of try and shift things around from where client development has been going, and try to start thinking about leveraging all that capital that we have in the Java community as Java developers, and start thinking about how can we make the client more like the server environment from a programmer's perspective, so we can leverage all this stuff. And so we accomplish this, of course, through Java's Java to JavaScript compiler. And the great thing about doing this, of compiling Java to JavaScript, is we get lots of things for free. When you write JavaScript on your own, you've got to worry about, does this thing work like this in Internet Explorer, and maybe it has to work a little bit differently in Firefox. And a lot of tools have come along, like jQuery, which help abstract that stuff as well, and that's fine and dandy. But there's still a lot of things that you need to do. And when we have dynamic code, which is trying to detect what browser we're working in and figuring out what branches of logic to work through, that can really slow down your application. So the other thing that we are able to get is this heavy upfront optimization, which the GWT compiler gives us. And of course, when we start thinking about running things through a compiler, we start thinking about really slow development cycles. So if you haven't worked with GWT before, we have this thing called the development mode, and it gives you this code and refresh in development environment. And of course, it allows us to debug our client and Java code in the IDE. If I feel like I'm going too fast, it's because I'm actually going to get to some live demos. So if you're thinking he's going through these slides really, really quickly, that's because I'm compressed. This is normally a 1-hour talk. About 15 minutes has been shaved off of that, and I really want to show you guys this stuff in action. So if you're squinting and thinking, hey, I'm not getting what you're talking about. So if you're not familiar with CDI, CDI is a new programming model. The specification is JSR 299. And what it does is it provides us a really nice standard way of doing dependency injection and context management within an EE container. And one of the nice things about this spec was that really kind of caught our eye when we were thinking about this is something called CDI Events. So CDI Events are is a nice abstraction that allows you to sort of create decoupled type safe events through, in this particular case, this is actually an example code, which I'm actually going to show you in a minute, showing you us injecting a simple event handler doc. In fact, I think that this slide is out of order. But I will get to it. And here's an example of actually observing an event. So actually, if I kind of go back and forth between these, you can see that this is an example. This is an example injecting an event handler. That event interface is a standard interface in CDI. Any CDI container, you can say, hey, I want to be able to send a document event, and then conversely, you can observe a document event with this observer method. And you can do this in any CDI container. What I've just shown you right here, if you're running in a Java EE container, you can simply have your beans listen for these events. That's really all there is to it, observers and basically message senders. And this will end up being a huge part of this demo. Now, I mean, GWT is, that slide was supposed to come after this. I have no idea how it got reorganized there. But this is an example of a project layout for GWT if you've never worked with it before. And I've told you, as I've said before, it compiles Java code into JavaScript code. And so what we get here is a application layout here where we have some of our classes which are bound to be compiled down to JavaScript, and the other segment of those classes actually living on the server, actually in the server package there. And otherwise, it's a standard, like, WAR project, and there's some of our own framework utilities, framework properties files there for you to work with. And so we support things like CDI producers, like these things that can create stuff. We support remote procedure calls. And one of the cool things about trying to bring CDI into the browser is this, like, flipping the client and server code around here. And, here the client code here is implementing a service, which we want to be able to call. And down below, you can see we're injecting a caller, which is an RPC caller, and it has a callback in there, and we're calling a method on it. And, with Errai, one of the things that we've done is we've really been able to allow you to exchange that code. So we have client and server, and we can copy and paste that code back and forth. And actually, we can move that service, which is now living in the client, onto the server. And our code from the client can then call the stuff on the server. And I'm going to show you all this stuff in a demo. So I'm kind of give you a brief overview of all this. And we support JAX, RS, endpoints, and all this other wonderful stuff. I don't like slides. It's not in my nature to focus too much on slides. I really like to show you guys code. So, we also support marshalling, a new marshalling framework. It allows us to create these really easily marshalable entities. We have this nice portable annotation. And it also supports something really cool, which is immutable entities. A lot of marshalling frameworks out there, they don't allow you to actually create immutable types to actually move across the wire. In this particular case, we've provided this really nice abstraction where we can actually even go and create static factories. And using this maps to annotation, we can explain to the Errai marshalling system how we can build and construct these objects as they go in and across the wire. So let's look at the demo. This is what I wanted to get to. This is where I can really explain things to you guys. So, and I think this is the best way to show something, because slides just suck. So, and you can tell how fast I wanted to get through them. So, one of the things that I really wanted to do is I wanted to get rid of all this cruff that a lot of people who've worked with GWT before have really kind of turned their nose up at, because there's a lot of boilerplate associated with that. And so I'm going to start from scratch. This is a blank Errai application. There's nothing in it. There's no classes. There's a base configuration here. There's nothing going on right now. So this is like a brand new app. And I'm going to build an Errai application from scratch right before your eyes. And so I'm going to create this new class. I'm going to call it app. And I'm going to put this little entry point annotation on it. And this little entry point annotation says to the Errai's compiler that this is our entry point bean, that this is how the application is going to start up. And so let's just go here, and I'll put a little post construct method here. I'm going to say private void on called, or on startup, let's call it that. I'm a little bit tired. And I'll say hello world. This is an entire Errai application. This is actually all I have to do. I can actually go and I can start the application now, and I will do that. Let's go ahead and look at this. And so I've basically defined an entire application using this entry point annotation, telling the compiler this is how you need to construct this object and call this method when the actual application starts up. So it's going to go ahead and do that, and there it is. So there's our hello world after it went through all the GWT stuff and got up and running. That's pretty cool. That took me like no time at all. So, what else can we do with this? Well, another cool thing that we can do, because I said we're using this CDI model in the browser. We can really start thinking about using dependency injection, taking it really seriously. Like, for example, let's say that I have like I want to create like a message provider or something like that. This is a little bit contrived. Doesn't necessarily have to be particularly fancy. And let's go and let's say it's an application scoped bean, and let's even go. Well, let's just make it return a static message for now. Oh. Yeah, sure. We have to answer your question. We have a simple Maven archetype which I just ran, and then imported it into my IDE. So we have a Maven archetype which you can just run from the command line, and we'll just set this up for you. And then you can. What's that? Yeah, you can. Well, because the Maven you can use the Maven utilities to create an Eclipse configuration or an IDE or an IDEA configuration or a NetBeans configuration. But actually, we've really tried really hard just to make it work with the Maven integration in each of the respective IDEs. So in this particular case, in my IDE, and this works in Eclipse too. This is IntelliJ. I'm just relying on the Maven integration to get this up and running. So all my IDE has done is read the POM file that was created, and that's how we got this up and running. And so it's quite simple in that regard. So, I'll go here, and I've created my bean, and I'll make it return apple. And so we can go here and evolve our application a little bit. And I'm going to say I want to inject that message provider into this actual client-side bean. Remember, this is all client-side code. This is getting turned into JavaScript. This is obviously the whole point. So if I go and change my Windows alert there, and did I kill my process? I think I did. Shouldn't have done that. So I've basically advanced this bean a little bit. I've created an application scoped bean which lives in my client. Once again, this is client code. It's very simple. Tells the Errai container that it wants it to instantiate this bean and be available anywhere in the application, and then inject that stuff. And if we find my way back to the browser, I'm sure it's loaded by there. There it is, Apple. So we actually injected that bean into our entry point and called the actual method to get that. We can do lots of other cool things with this. Of course, we can go and, let's say, for example, I can go and create a produces method, and this is. I'm not going to teach you about CDI today. I'm just going to show you that our stuff works with this CDI programming model, because that's really all I have time to do. So if you have more questions about CDI, come and ask me. But I'm just going to kind of try and let the code speak for itself today. And so I'm going to say here and go produces string. I'm going to produce a string here, make it return a string. And if I actually then say, let's actually make this a little more complicated. Let's make this a little more cool. I'm going to go and create an annotation here. I'm going to call it A. And I'm going to make it a CDI qualifier. And if you don't know what that is, you'll probably figure it out in about a second or two. I'm going to create another one. I'm going to call that one B. And let's say this one produces A. I'll create another one over here that produces B. And I'll say private string produce B string. And it will return B string. And so these produces methods are telling the container that it can call these methods to get this stuff when it's asked for. So if I actually go ahead and say, well, hey, inject. These can be static as well, actually, because it kind of makes more sense in this case. If I say go inject a string here, string A, and inject B, we'll go ahead and we'll don't know, let's append that to the end there. String A plus string B, like so. And just prove that that works. Oops, I don't want Chrome. I'll come back, Firefox. We'll just go ahead and update that. Oh. I don't know what happened. Let me see here. So what I've done there is, if you haven't, like, this is like, once again, this is all being compiled down to JavaScript. This is like what's cool about this is we're giving you this really powerful, concise programming model that lets you sort of put your application together using this nice DI pattern. And there you go. You can see there's the Apple A string plus B string, using the qualified injection there in producers. That's cool. Okay, so we can build. I've proven to you that you can use a CDI programming model to build things in the client, but that's not even really like the end of all of this. So you can start to imagine how you can create a nice, really big modular application using a nice, clean, decoupled model like this. But what about the server? What about talking to the server? So the server's got the CDI programming model as well. So we're running in a Java EE6 environment here. And so we can actually go to the server side stuff here, and we'll create a bean here. I'll call it my server bean. And I'll make it application scoped. And what do we want to do? We probably want to talk to this bean somehow. So let's go and use another CDI idiom here. I'm going to create one of those events I talked about earlier. I'm going to call it client event. And I'm going to put that portable annotation. What that portable annotation says is, like, I want to be able to move this class between the client and the server. So I want to be able to marshal it. And so I probably want to send some data with this object, actually. I'll go and, actually, let's make it immutable like I showed you guys earlier. Put a message in there. And let's make it all immutable. So there we go. Oops. What happened there? So we construct it once. Can't make a change to it. That's perfect. Awesome. And so let's go back and let's modify our app a little bit. Let's get rid of all this stuff, actually. Let's do something serious. I am going to inject I'm going to inject this event interface here, which is actually JavaX Enterprise event. So once again, this is standard Java EE6 stuff in the browser. Like, we're not using any GWT APIs or anything like that. We're just going to say, I want you to consume this event called client event, whatever. All right, that's what my browser recommended. I mean, my IDE, I should say. And I'm going to inject a root panel. And what the root panel is it is actually like the root of the DOM in the browser. So it allows us to, like, interact with that quite easily through the actual DI container. I'll just go ahead and I'll create a simple button here. It'll be called Click Me. Hit Click Me here. I'm going to go fire a new client event, and I'll say, Hello, India. So this is a standard click handler. If you've seen Swing before or anything like this, it's probably very familiar to you. You don't have to use this, of course, if you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, I don't want to, I've programmed in Swing before, and I don't want to like write an entire app like this. Actually, don't pay too much mind to this. There's actually a whole XML-based way of laying this stuff out. I'm not going to show you that today because I don't have time. But just for the sake of doing this, we're going to do this all programmatically today. And so I'm going to go ahead and add that button to our root panel, and that's it. So I've created a simple CDI-based client app, which creates a button in the server. When that server gets clicked, it's going to fire the CDI event. But we want to, of course, observe this on the server. Let's probably saw that coming. And I'll say observes client event. I'll just print it out, simple system out.println here. Get message. So that's it. So I've created an observer. I've told the Errai framework that this message is portable, and I'm going to fire that event from this client code. Pretty simple. I mean, I haven't done anything. I haven't created any XML or properties files to, like, explain to Errai, like, what the RPC endpoint is. I haven't done anything like that. Oops, what's going on here? Oh, no. I forgot to tell Errai how to construct this app. So Errai actually said, hey, you don't have a default constructor on that. What's going on? I can't build this class. So what this maps2 annotation says is, hey, the bean attribute message of this class is represented by this constructor arg. This actually tells Errai how it can construct and deconstruct the bean. So that was my fault there. Errai was actually doing its job and gave me a very informative error that I quickly got rid of there. So we should see this little button come up as we start up the server again and compile this stuff down. And there's that click me button. And so here's our server log down here. And if we go and go back to our browser and hit click me, there it is. There's that hello India appearing down there. So we're actually firing these CDI events from the client, and it's being observed on the server. And all we did was we said, hey server, I want you to observe client event. And in the application, I injected an event sender. But that's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. So we can observe client events on the server. We can do it in the exact same reverse order. So let's set this up a little bit more in a little more sophisticated manner. Let's create something here called, I don't know, message response. That'll also be portable. Final string message, simple object here. It's exactly like the other one. And so remember when we went in here before and we injected this JavaX enterprise event class, we're just going to do the exact same thing on the server, but with this thing that we want the actual client to be able to observe. And so I'm going to do the same inject annotation. I'm going to go message response. What's that?
You need to have that map injection on the message response?
No. Oh, no, I have to have, yes, event. And so message response event, we'll inject that there. So when the client sends it a message, let's send a message back. Let's go message response, fire, new. What was that? Message response. Hey, I received your message, event.get message. So we'll just take that data that we got from the client and send it back in this other package response, and let's just go back and create an observers method in the actual client code here. Let's go ahead and do that. I'll go void observes message response. And we'll just make it do a simple pop-up with that message when it comes back in. And so this is really showing you this sort of initial promise I made you of like using the exact same programming model in the client and the server. It is literally the exact same programming model. So we'll start this up. Here comes up our browser again. Oops. I made the exact same mistake I did last time. Look at that. I'm jet lagged. This is what happens when you're jet lagged. You did warn me, and I didn't know what you were talking about. So we can start this up. And here it comes again. If I go click me, hey, I received your message. Hello, India. So we just fired an event from the client, a CDI event, observed on the server, and then we fired another event which observed in the client. And like this is actually, taken a lot of work to actually get working in the last year. And so to listen for asynchronous. Oh, okay. All right. I like audience interaction. Let's actually try this. So let's actually step this up a bit. So what we have done now is we've fired an event from the client, we've observed it on the server, we fired an event on the server, and we observed it on the client. It was really cool. And that was all just converted into JavaScript and ran natively in the client. But he asked, can we observe messages asynchronously in the client? Yes. So let's actually try this. Let's go ahead and let's do something really, really silly. I'll just create a thread here just for the fun of it. You probably wouldn't really want to do it this way, but I'm going to. Let's implement run. Let's just have it say, I don't know, while true. You wouldn't really want to do this in an app server, but we're going to do it here today. I'll just go try, catch, interrupted exception here. If that actually happens, just return, whatever. So we'll take that. Let's move this code up here. And let's modify this message a little bit here. Let's actually not send that message back. Let's just say the time on the server is new date. Or system.current time millis probably will make the point better. All right, come over here. Let's just start that thread up, like so. So we'll fork that thread. So I'm doing something really silly. I'm starting a thread on the server every time I receive an event, and I'm going to text response.getMessage. There we go. So as those messages come in asynchronously, it's just going to update the value in that label. So let's go here and go root panel. I'll add that label to the panel now. Let's start the app again. So what we've done here is I've done something ridiculously absurd, which is to create a thread on the server when we receive that client event, and we'll start sending messages every 250 milliseconds. So there's our app. I'm going to hit click me. And there we go. You can actually see there it's actually observing those events completely asynchronously. I didn't have to do anything special. I didn't use any special AJAX APIs. I just told the client that I want to be able to observe those events. So, I mean, what's that? You can actually see that if you'd like to. You won't be able to make much sense of it because it's obfuscated. It's obfuscated JavaScript. You want to see the obfuscated JavaScript? What's that? It's minified, optimized, inlined. It's very efficient. I'll show you something really cool, actually. This is how I like to do presentations. It's the best way to do it. It's the best way to accomplish this stuff. So what we've done is there's a technology that's underlying all this, which I haven't mentioned. It's kind of living beneath the surface. It's been here all the time. It's been making everything that I've shown you here today possible, and it's called the Errai bus. It is a massively asynchronous messaging framework which supports both like AJAX and WebSockets magically. Actually, if you have WebSocket support on your server and in the client, we can actually take advantage of that. So let's go here. I've got something really cool going on here. I'll start this. Yes, it does, and I'll show you exactly how it does that. I have a build of AS here that's already prepped and ready to show you. So I'm going to start up JBoss AS7 here. Now, you guys are actually like the first people at any conference to have ever seen this. So this is an early build of JBoss 7.1.2, and it has in it native support for WebSockets that have been built in. And so the Errai bus is taking advantage of that. And I'm going to start up Chrome here and go to this application which I just launched and bring this up. And so this is the exact same basic thing that I just showed you. So we've got like this code that had been compiled down to JavaScript, and it's observing all of these client events which are streaming to it from the server. Now the cool thing is that to your point, to your question, I mean, if we look at the JavaScript console here, we can actually see what Errai did behind the scenes here. If we zoom in a little bit here, we can see that. So the server, like at some point, it basically, when it connected to the server actually told it that it was capable of doing both long polling and WebSockets at that point. And so the actual JavaScript in the client was like, hey, you can speak WebSockets. That's cool. And so the server actually told it where it could actually connect to the WebSocket channel. And so you can see that it actually came down here and it's like, hey, I'm going to attempt to open a WebSockets there. Hey, I was able to open the WebSocket. Negotiated it, received verification token. Then a WebSocket channel was opened successfully. Then it actually deactivated its comment channel. So it actually did. You can actually see that it was originally using Ajax polling, and then it actually upgraded and then moved over and just started using the app from the actual WebSockets channel completely transparently. We can actually go in and I can bring up, say, like an old version of Camino. This is like a 4-year-old version of Camino. It's based on like Firefox like 3 or something like that. Well, I will. Oh, so, who here is familiar with what WebSockets are? Oh, really? Okay, this is cool. I was being presumptive that people knew what these were. Probably a little bit living too much in my own little bubble. So, WebSockets are a new technology which have just finally gone final. That is supported by Chrome and Firefox and I believe it's supported by Safari today. I don't know what the state of the union is for Internet Explorer, but WebSockets are essentially a new way of talking to a web server, as opposed to using HTTP. They actually piggyback on HTTP for compatibility's sake and to work through proxies and fun stuff like that. But what you're seeing here is a persistent, long-running connection, or streaming connection, essentially, to the server. So the server is just sending these messages now to the client over a long open socket. There's no HTTP requests happening. There's no headers to deal with. This is just like raw data that the actual JavaScript client's able to work with. And so this is built into like all of your modern, most up-to-date browsers today. I even believe the latest version of Internet Explorer. And you can see that you know, it's really cool. But the one thing I was trying to demonstrate before the WebSockets question came up was the fact that we're able to take advantage of this new, wonderful, modern messaging technology in the browser. And of course, we're using that same programming model. I built this application on that same programming model that I live demoed to you before. But I also have this really old browser. It doesn't know anything about WebSockets. And it's actually, so what it's going to do is it's going to just use normal Ajax. And if we load this up, actually, this is like an older application. You can see it's still working perfectly fine using the old WebSockets technology. Just using normal long polling. So if we go in here and look at, say, the developer tools, and if we bring up the network developer tools, you can actually see there's really nothing going on. Had this been Ajax coming in, you'd see like the log like firing with like lots of these GET requests. In fact, if we bring up Firefox 5 that I have here, you can also see this sort of cool thing going on where we have lots of different versions of browsers on my computer. And so this is Firefox 5, but it actually doesn't know anything about WebSockets itself. So if we actually go and bring up this web console, there you go. Look at that. Look what the Ajax requests are actually doing. And so we're actually seeing two completely different ways of interacting with the server. In the background on this one, Firefox is sending GET requests to the server like crazy to get this data. But in Chrome, we're actually streaming it over WebSockets. But if we actually look at that, you can actually eyeball that up. You can see they're in perfect sync with each other. So the Errai bus is completely abstract, like two completely different technologies, but the same programming model. It's completely hidden from view, and you don't have to worry about that. We actually do lots of cool stuff to optimize the wire performance. We do message coalescence and all this other crazy stuff that I could talk about in order to make this work fast. But it's really a cool set of technologies, and I really have only kind of touched on the tip of the iceberg of this. There's actually a lot of other modules and integrations that we've done beyond what I've shown you today. And I'd love to have had more time to show them to you. But that's kind of just really like I said, that's like maybe the sweetest parts that get you kind of interested in what we're doing. Are there any questions at this point? Oh God, the whole bloody room. Yes.
So in the Chrome, I understood the server is just continuously sending the data.
Yes.
And the client is just updating depending on the response it got. And in the Firefox, you saw that the Firefox is making GET requests.
Yes.
So one is like pull and one is like push.
Yes, one is pulling and one has a streaming connection to the server. The same server code is doing both. The code is identical in both cases. This is a CDI-based application in the client. It has like an observer method, like one of those ones I wrote before, that's observing stock ticks. And it's just basically like deconstructing those stock ticks and using it to update this UI as they come in. But from the server's perspective, it's just sitting there going fire, 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 fire. It doesn't know where they're going. Like from the actual perspective of the server code, it has no idea if there's any clients even out there in the ether. It's completely abstracted, and you don't really worry about. There's other things that I can't get to. There's like security, and there's like more complex ways you can do message routing and stuff. But like I said, I don't have time to cover all this. Yes, of course. There's a technology called JSNI, the JavaScript Native Interface. And it allows you to write completely native Java methods which can interrupt. There's actually a special way that you can actually call into the compiled Java methods, or you can compile or you can call JavaScript methods from the Java code. And that's called JSNI. Works in both directions. We actually have a demo that integrates with jQuery, which is actually a pretty good place to look at how that's done. And if I can send you a link or something like that. What's that?
Whether we can just customize the JavaScript or the HTML that has been generated, like we created a button from the Java code.
Yeah.
Is it possible to add CSS styles to that?
Yes, of course. This is 100% HTML compliant. You can use regular CSS style sheets. Like you can also just evolve regular HTML. Like you can create widget wrappers around regular DOM entities in GWT. Like that was sort of one of the things I prefaced with when I said don't like read too much into this sort of swing style of development. You're not limited to that. That's like one of the many ways that you can do UI in GWT. You can use another technology called UI Binder, which is similar to sort of JSF in the client, like in terms of like markup, and it sort of gives you sort of a JSF-like markup, and it works really great. You can also just use plain HTML. Create a plain HTML like you would with a jQuery document, and you can actually interact with the DOM. And you can even wrap widgets around those DOM elements and then interact with them that way. There's actually many different ways you can do this. So the answer is yes.
So that means like on the Java side, I will have to add attributes, CSS attributes to the object that I created. Like I create a label. After that, I have to add like style equal to something.
Yeah, you can do that you can do that in the Java code. You can do that in JavaScript code, or you can just use CSS. If you're working in UI Binder, I would recommend you look at UI Binder. It intermeshes the actual widget markup with the HTML itself, and that makes that sort of thing very easy to do. So I would take a look at that. Yes.
This is only broadcast, or we can like specifically give messages to.
Yes, you can actually do what's called conversational messaging. So you can actually create a conversational scope in which only the client and the server within a specific context can see each other. So when the server sends that conversational message, only one client, which is in that conversation scope, can see it. I normally actually show that in these talks, but I omitted it for the very reason that it's down to 45 minutes.
Another question: does this work with App Engine?
Yes.
It does work.
Yes, we have had people work with. There is an App Engine. I don't know if the App Engine stuff is actually in our current code base. To be honest with you, App Engine has a very particular way of handling long polling. There's a special API for that, and someone has implemented it successfully to make our bus actually wait properly within the App Engine context. But I can't. I don't know. I didn't do that particular code. I just know that it's been made to work on there, and I'm not the one who actually wrote the App Engine integration. So, any other questions? Say that again. There's no reason not to use Errai with GWT, to be honest with you. Like, even if you're not interested in this messaging bus stuff, the CDI programming model, the stuff that I showed you before, has a lot to offer just for plain GWT development. And that won't get in the way of you using regular GWT RPC or using REST. We actually have a whole REST API that I also didn't have time to show you today. But you can do regular RPC, regular AJAX. You don't. We basically have created a whole ecosystem of take it or leave it features, and so it really isn't like, I don't think it's like a question like that. I think dependency injection is a really powerful tool for building applications, and so if you're interested in using that with your current GWT application, but you weren't really interested in using our I/O stuff or our WebSocket stuff, you can actually just use that particular feature.
It's totally tied up with GWT. Is that what it is?
It's currently tied to GWT, yes. Let me go back to my slides because that kind of addresses this point a bit. So, how much time do I have, by the way? 5 minutes? Okay. Yeah, I have to skip this. Skip. I already showed you that guy. Yeah. All right, okay. So, to answer that particular question, we actually have a module called Errai.js, which is like a plain JavaScript library, which exposes a lot of the services that we're showing you. Not dependency injection. It will provide you access to things like Errai bus through a plain JavaScript API, and we are planning on doing that. It actually exists today. It's not part of the 2.0 release because it's really not like production ready. But that actually is something which will be coming. We have some actual use cases within the company for that, so that's actually a priority for us. Does that answer your question?
Basically, how well are you integrated or connected with GWT?
Well, I mean, we use GWT to turn Java code into JavaScript, so I mean, like, we needed to do that. So I mean, it is fairly integrated in that sense.
Between two versions, there was a massive change in the code structure of GWT.
Yes, so we have taken a little bit of our own control of our own destiny. Errai projects have a slightly modified package structure. You probably saw before that there was like a client and a shared package. So we've slightly modified the sort of the default GWT code structure to build an Errai application. That doesn't actually mean you have to use that. You can work around that if you don't want to use that package layout. But we sort of take backwards compatibility within the context of our framework pretty seriously. So if there are any future drastic changes to GWT that would have any effect on how our users interact with the framework, we would, of course, probably work on solutions for either migration or backwards compatibility at our level. So, other questions? More questions?
WebSockets work on HTTP ports, API?
Yes, yes, they're designed. The way that WebSockets work is they actually start off as a regular HTTP request. So there's actually a new header called it's actually connection upgrade, and if a web server sees that, it's basically supposed to essentially put the actual request into a different mode, where the client then has to basically there has to be essentially a handshake between them to establish a WebSockets connection. And so yeah, and it was designed to work like that, so it could work through proxies and network equipment and stuff, which is sensitive, does deep packet inspection, things like that, and it's sensitive to HTTP. And so that's all. Say that again. Yes, but you can also use WebSockets on a separate port on its own. We actually have a support for that. We have a standalone WebSockets server that does run on a different port. We call it our side channel server. It's built on top of Netty. The WebSockets support I was showing you today was actually running off of port 80 on the actual server. So that was those were upgraded requests.
On the server side, other than JBoss, all of the major servers, are they supporting it
There's no type of standardized support today, but I do believe that all the major app servers at this point have some semblance of support for WebSockets in one way or the other. Yeah. Well, yeah, Tomcat supports WebSockets, I think, in the latest version. Definitely, it does. Jetty has support for WebSockets in the latest version. So, yes. 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 Anyone else? It is not tightly coupled to CDI. Actually, CDI is one of those take it or leave it features as well. We actually have a lightweight DI container, which is actually based just on the basic JSR 330 spec as well, which this is layered on top of. And you can just use that as well without the CDI features. Or you can not use it at all. We actually do have APIs to use all this stuff without the dependency injection container. But I'm out of time. But if people want to come and ask me questions, I'll just step out into the hall there, and you guys can like crowd around me and ask me questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer these questions. But they need to kick me out. So.